Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something truly terrifying. A time when death knocked on every door, when entire cities became graveyards, and when humanity faced its darkest hour. We're talking about life during the Black Death, the most devastating pandemic in recorded history. Forget what you think you know about medieval plagues. This isn't about rats and fleas. It's about watching your family die in 3 days, about doctors who made things worse, and about a world where 1 in 2 people simply disappeared. So before you get comfortable, hit that like button, subscribe if you dare, and let's descend into the year 1348 together. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll never complain about a common cold again. Congratulations, you've just woken up in London, October 1348. The good news? You're still breathing. The bad news? That might change by sunset. You open your eyes in a cramped wooden house on Pudding Lane. The first thing that hits you isn't the cold October air seeping through the cracks in your walls. It's the smell. Oh God, the smell. It's sweet, cloying, and wrong. It's the smell of rotting flesh mixed with burning herbs, human waste, and something else. Fear, pure animalistic fear, has a scent, and in 1348 London, it's everywhere. You stumble to your feet, your straw mattress crunches beneath you, probably infested with the very fleas that are killing half of Europe. But you don't know that yet. Nobody does. People think it's bad air, God's wrath, or planetary alignment. The actual killer, Yersinia pestis bacteria, won't be discovered for another 500 years. Outside your window, you hear the bells, not the cheerful morning bells calling people to prayer. These are different, slow, methodical, death bells. They've been ringing non-stop for weeks now. 1 ring for a child, 2 for a woman, 3 for a man. Today, they never stop. The bell ringer himself died yesterday, but his replacement keeps going. Someone has to count the dead. You look at your hands, no black spots. Good. You check your neck, your armpits, your groin, no swellings. You've survived another night. But in this city, where 200 people die daily, where mass graves overflow, where doctors have fled, and priests refuse last rites, surviving the night doesn't mean much. The house feels empty. Your eldest son left for work 3 days ago and never returned. Your wife is in the corner, praying. She's been praying for 48 hours straight. You want to tell her it won't help. The bishops themselves are dying. But what else is there? Welcome to London, 1348. The Black Death has arrived, and it's hungry. Your first task every morning isn't washing your face or eating breakfast. It's the death check. This is your new morning prayer, your daily lottery with fate. You strip down what little clothing you have and begin the examination that might determine if you'll see another sunset. First, you check your neck. You run trembling fingers along your throat, feeling for lumps. The buboes, those horrific swellings that give the plague its name, often appear here first. They start small, like almonds under the skin, but within hours they can grow to the size of apples. Black, putrid apples filled with blood and pus. Your fingers find nothing. Relief floods through you, but you're not done. Next, the armpits. You raise your arms, probing the soft flesh. This is where it got your neighbor, Thomas the baker. One morning, he was kneading dough. By evening, he was screaming in agony as egg-sized lumps burst through his skin. He lasted 2 days. The lucky ones only last 2 days. Then comes the most terrifying check, the groin. More people find their death sentence here than anywhere else. You've heard stories of people cutting out their own buboes with kitchen knives, desperate to remove the infection. It doesn't work. Nothing works, but the lumps aren't the only sign. You examine your skin for the patches, the dark bruise-like marks that appear as blood vessels burst beneath the surface. God's tokens, people call them. Once they appear, You have hours, not days. Your skin turns black as your body rots from the inside out. That's why they call it the Black Death. Your wife watches you perform this ritual. She's already done hers. You both passed today's test, but there's no celebration. You've seen too many people healthy at dawn and dead by dusk. The pneumonic form of plague, the one that attacks the lungs, can kill in hours. You could be coughing blood by noon. Check the children, your wife whispers. Your two youngest are still asleep, curled together for warmth. You gently examine their small bodies, praying to find smooth skin. Today, mercifully you do. But little Mary from next door was clear yesterday morning, too. By evening, her mother was wrapping her tiny body in a flour sack. Coffins are for the wealthy now. The death check is done. You've won another morning. But in a city where the plague kills 200 people a day, where bodies stack in the streets like cordwood, where the very air seems poisoned with death, you know this victory is temporary. The Black Death doesn't just kill you, it makes you wait for it. You've passed the morning death check. Now comes an equally depressing ritual, finding something to eat in a city that's slowly starving to death. The plague hasn't just killed people, it's destroyed the entire food supply chain. The farmers are dead or too terrified to come to the city. The bakers are dead. The butchers are dead. The brewers are mostly dead. What remains is a mockery of food, sold at prices that would have caused riots just a year ago. But who's going to riot now? Half the rioters are already in the plague pits. You shuffle to what passes for your kitchen, a corner with a small fire pit and a few wooden shelves. Your breakfast options are grim. There's a heel of bread, hard as stone and spotted with mold. You paid 3 days' wages for this loaf last week. Before the plague, it would have cost a few pennies. Now a chicken costs what a horse used to. If you can even find a chicken, the mold on the bread might kill you, but slower than starvation, you scrape off the worst of it and gnaw on what remains. Your teeth hurt. Scurvy is setting in from the lack of fresh food. But scurvy is a luxury problem now. It means you've lived long enough for vitamin deficiency to matter. Your wife boils water. At least you've learned that much. The physicians say the plague travels in corrupted air, but somehow boiled water seems safer. She drops in some dried herbs, trying to make a tea. The herbs are supposed to ward off the pestilence. Rue, rosemary, and wormwood. They don't work, but the ritual of brewing them provides some false comfort. The markets, when they open at all, are scenes from hell. Sellers wear thick leather masks like deformed birds. Buyers toss coins into buckets of vinegar, hoping to clean the curse off them. Everyone stays 6 feet apart, not from wisdom, but from the belief that plague vapors can only travel so far. They're accidentally right, but for all the wrong reasons. Meat is available if you're desperate enough. But you've heard the rumors. That's not beef they're selling. When the graveyards overflow and bodies pile up faster than they can be buried, some enterprising butchers have found a new source of protein. You stick to bread and water. Your children cry from hunger. You give them your portion, pretending you're not hungry. Your stomach cramps, but it's nothing compared to watching your neighbor's children starve after both parents died. They lasted a week, begging at doors that wouldn't open. Then silence. In the distance, you hear a commotion. Someone's found a hidden store of grain. By the time you get there, it'll be gone, or the finder will be dead, killed for a few handfuls of wheat. This is London in 1348, where the living envy the dead, and breakfast might be your last meal for reasons that have nothing to do with plague. You can't stay inside forever. The rent is due, and your landlord, one of the few rich enough to flee to the countryside, still expects payment. His collector, wrapped in waxed leather and reeking of vinegar, will come knocking. If you can't pay, you're on the streets, and the streets are where people go to die. Stepping outside is like entering another world. London was never clean. But this is different. The narrow streets, already cramped, are now obstacle courses of horror. Bodies lie where they fell. Some have been there for days, bloated and black, leaking fluids that pool in the mud. Nobody moves them anymore. The death carts can't keep up. Bring out your dead. The call echoes down the lane. The collector's cart creaks past, already piled high with corpses. Arms and legs hang over the sides like broken dolls. A child's hand, tiny and pale, dangles from the heap. You look away, but where can you look? Death is everywhere. The living aren't much better than the dead. People shuffle past like ghosts, eyes hollow, faces gaunt. Everyone walks in the middle of the street, as far from others as possible. When someone coughs, everyone scatters. A cough is a death sentence. The pneumonic plague spreads through the air, and it kills faster than the bubonic form. You pass what used to be the bakery. It's boarded up, a red cross painted on the door. Lord have mercy on us is scrawled beneath it. The entire family is locked inside. City law says if one person shows symptoms, everyone in the house is quarantined for 40 days. You can hear sobbing from within, or maybe it's laughing. After a while, they sound the same. The church cemetery is full, has been for weeks. Now they're digging plague pits, massive trenches where bodies are stacked like lumber. No individual graves, no markers, no prayers, just efficiency. They pour quicklime over each layer to speed decomposition and mask the smell. It doesn't work. The stench is everywhere, so thick you can taste it. A group of flagellants passes by, whipping themselves bloody, believing their suffering will appease God's wrath. Their backs are raw meat, infected and rotting. They're probably spreading more disease than they're preventing, but who's going to stop them? The authorities? Half of them are dead. The other half have fled. You need to buy food, but the market is a death trap. People push and shove, desperate for the few goods available. You see a woman collapse, black foam bubbling from her mouth. Everyone steps over her. By tomorrow, she'll be another anonymous body in the pit. This is your city now, your proud London, reduced to an open-air morgue where the living stumble through streets paved with the dead. You've been feeling warm all morning. Not plague warm, you hope, just exhaustion and hunger. But in 1348, any symptom could be your death warrant. Your wife insists you see a physician. You want to laugh. The physicians are either dead, fled, or useless. But she's desperate, and desperation makes people do stupid things. You find one of the few doctors still practicing, if you can call it that. He wears the costume that will haunt history, a leather coat covered in wax, thick gloves, and that horrifying bird beak mask stuffed with herbs and spices. He looks like death's pet raven. The beak is supposed to filter the bad air. It doesn't. "Show me your tongue," he demands, his voice muffled by the mask. You comply. He doesn't get close. Doctors have learned that proximity kills. He peers from a distance, then nods knowingly. Your humors are unbalanced. Too much blood. The plague feeds on excess blood. The treatment? Bloodletting, of course. It's always bloodletting. Feeling weak? Drain your blood. Feeling feverish? Drain your blood. Actively dying? Drain even more blood. In a disease that already causes internal bleeding, they want to create more bleeding. It's like treating drowning with more water. He pulls out his tools, a collection of blades that haven't been cleaned since his last patient, or his last 5 patients. The dried blood on them is black. You wonder how many people these blades have killed versus the plague itself. I can also apply leeches, he offers, producing a jar of the writhing creatures. They're very effective at drawing out the pestilential humors. The leeches are fat and sluggish. They've been feeding well lately. Too well. The real treatments are even worse. Crushed emeralds for the wealthy, because apparently gems cure disease, mercury rubs that cause your skin to slough off, arsenic potions that kill you faster than the plague would. One doctor swears by a paste made from human feces, like cures like, he says. The smell alone makes people vomit, which he claims is the poison leaving the body. For the buboes, they have special tortures. Some doctors lance them with hot irons, causing patients to die from shock. Others pack them with a mixture of tree resin, white lily root, and dried human excrement. The infection that follows is often worse than the plague itself. The religious cures are no better. Priests sell holy water that's just river water, the same river where plague victims are dumped. Pieces of saints' bones that are actually pig bones, prayer scrolls to be worn around the neck, written in Latin that's mostly gibberish. You decline the bloodletting, you can't afford it anyway. The doctor shrugs, he'll have another patient within the hour. As you leave, you see his assistant dumping a bucket of blood into the street. It joins the human waste, the animal carcasses, the general filth. This is medicine in 1348, ignorance dressed in authority, selling false hope to the dying, while probably spreading the very disease it claims to cure. The church bells haven't stopped ringing for 3 weeks, not for prayers, for funerals. So many funerals that they've given up on individual ceremonies. Now it's just mass blessings over mass graves, and even those are becoming rare. The priests are dying faster than anyone. You drag yourself to the church, not from faith but from habit. Maybe God will notice you're still trying. Maybe he'll spare your family. But when you arrive, the scene destroys what little hope you had left. The church door is barred. A note hastily scrawled, Father William died Tuesday. Father Thomas died Thursday. No services until God sends relief. Half the congregation stands outside weeping. The other half is probably already dead. This is the cruelest blow. The church promised that faith would protect you. They said the plague was God's punishment for sin, prostitution, gambling, failing to observe the Sabbath. So people prayed harder, confessed more, paid for indulgences they couldn't afford, and still they died. The pious and the sinners, the bishops and the beggars, all feeding the same hungry earth. Inside the churchyard, the organized rows of graves have given way to chaos. Bodies are stacked waiting for burial. The gravedigger died last week, and his apprentice the week before. Now families dig their own graves if they have the strength. Most don't. A group of flagellants has taken over the church steps. They whip themselves until their backs are raw hamburger, believing their suffering will appease God. Blood splatters on the cobblestones, mixing with pus from their infected wounds. They sing hymns between screams. A child watches, transfixed. Tomorrow, he'll try it himself with his father's belt. The theological crisis is destroying society as fast as the plague. If God is all-powerful, why does he allow this? If the church is his voice on earth, why are its priests dying like everyone else? People are losing faith, and with faith goes order. Some turn to other explanations. It's the Jews poisoning wells, they say. It's witches consorting with Satan. It's the alignment of planets, the rise of vapors from the earth, the punishment for the Crusades. Anything but randomness, anything but the idea that death comes for everyone, regardless of virtue. You see a young priest, barely older than a boy, trying to offer last rites to a dying woman. His hands shake as he makes the sign of the cross. He doesn't have holy oil. They ran out weeks ago. He's using cooking grease. The woman doesn't care. She just wants to believe her suffering means something. But it doesn't. That's the hardest truth of 1348. The plague doesn't care about your prayers, your morality, your devotion. It consumes saints and sinners with equal appetite. God, if he's watching, offers no explanation, no comfort, no intervention. The church that once provided structure Meaning and hope has become just another institution failing in the face of incomprehensible death. And without God's logic to explain the suffering, people are left with nothing but the raw, meaningless reality of the plague. Money used to mean something. Now it's just paper and metal that can't buy you safety. The economy hasn't just collapsed, it's been turned inside out. The poor are still poor, but now the rich are dying too, and their gold can't save them. Your employer, a wool merchant, died 2 weeks ago. His wife tried to run the business, but she's gone too. Their son inherited everything for exactly 3 days before the plague took him. Now their wealth sits locked in an empty house while lawyers argue over who gets it. Half the lawyers are dead too. The guild system that controlled every trade has shattered. The master carpenter, who wouldn't let you join because your father wasn't a carpenter, dead. His journeymen, dead. The apprentices, mostly dead. Now anyone with 2 working hands can call themselves a carpenter if they live long enough to finish a job. Wages have gone insane. A laborer who made 2 pence a day now demands a shilling, 6 times as much, and he gets it because there's nobody else. The nobility screams about the natural order being destroyed, but their screams are muffled by the dirt being shoveled onto their coffins. You watch a strange reversal happening. The servants are inheriting their masters' houses. Peasants are taking over abandoned noble estates. A pig farmer now lives in the mayor's mansion. The mayor and his entire family died in 1 week. But here's the sick joke. There's nothing to buy with your newfound wages. The craftsmen are dead. The merchants are dead. The ships sit empty in the harbor because the sailors are dead. Gold is worthless when there's no bread to purchase. The few businesses still running are the ones dealing in death, coffin makers, until they run out of wood. Now bodies are buried in anything, barrels, sacks, or nothing at all. Gravediggers command royal wages, but it's the worst job in the world. Most last a week before joining their clients. A new economy emerges, the economy of fear. People pay fortune tellers to predict if they'll survive. They buy plague preventatives, vinegar, crushed pearls, powdered unicorn horn, actually just ground up horse hooves. A dried toad to wear around your neck costs a month's wages. It doesn't work, but neither does anything else. Inheritance law has collapsed. Entire family lines are extinguished in days. Property changes hands so fast that nobody can track ownership. A house might have 5 different owners in a month, each inheriting from the last, each dying before they can move in. The church, which once condemned usury, now charges interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. They need money to bury the dead, they say. But everyone knows the bishops are hoarding wealth, preparing to flee. You pass the Royal Exchange. It's empty except for the dead. The economy of the greatest city in England has been reduced to its most basic transaction: survival for another day, purchased with luck you can't earn and time you can't buy. Your wife hasn't touched you in 3 weeks, not from lack of love, from fear. Every kiss could be a death sentence. Every embrace might spread the infection. The plague hasn't just killed people, it's murdered intimacy itself. You sleep on opposite sides of the room now, as far apart as your cramped quarters allow. When she coughs in the night, you lie rigid with terror. Is it starting? Is this how your marriage ends? Not with goodbye, but with you watching her drown in her own blood? The couple next door had a different philosophy. If God wants us dead, we'll die apart or together. They said they made love like the world was ending, because it was. They died in each other's arms, covered in each other's buboes. The death cart took them together. Maybe they were the lucky ones. Your children don't understand why you won't hold them anymore. Little Margaret reaches for you, and you step back. She cries. You cry. But you've seen parents infect their children, watched whole families die in order baby mother, father, like dominoes of grief. Love has become dangerous. Your neighbors, John and Mary, were married just before the plague hit. She was 15, he was 17, their whole lives ahead of them. She developed the telltale swellings first. He could have run. Instead, he held her as she died, knowing it was suicide. He lasted 3 more days. The neighbors called him a fool. Others called him a saint. The brothels are still open. Human desperation and desire don't stop for plague. But the whores wear masks now and charge triple. Men pay it. They're going to die anyway, they figure. Might as well feel alive one last time. The churches condemn it, but half the priests are customers. You see families torn apart by more than death. Parents abandon sick children. Husbands flee from infected wives. One mother threw her fevered baby from a window, then jumped herself, choosing a quick death over watching her child rot alive. But you also see the opposite. The baker's widow, who could have fled to the countryside, stays to nurse her husband's sick apprentices. The priest who gives last rites knowing each blessing might be his last. The neighbors who leave food at the doors of quarantined houses, risking their lives for strangers. Your own marriage has become a negotiation with death. You and your wife have an unspoken agreement. If one shows symptoms, they'll leave. Walk into the woods and don't come back. Spare the other, spare the children. But you both know you won't. You'll stay. You'll watch each other die. Because what's the point of surviving if everyone you love is gone? Love in 1348 isn't romance. It's choosing whether to die together or alone. The children adapt fastest to this new world, and that's the most heartbreaking part. Your youngest doesn't remember when people didn't wear bird masks, when bodies didn't line the streets, when playing meant something other than jumping over corpses. The games they play now would have horrified you 2 years ago. Plague and victims. One child pretends to be sick, while others drag them to a pretend grave. They sing new nursery rhymes, ring around the rosy, pockets full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. They think it's funny. They don't understand they're singing about their own potential deaths. The orphan population has exploded. Whole gangs of parentless children roam the streets like feral cats. Some are taken in by relatives, the lucky ones. Others learn to steal, to beg, to sell themselves for bread. A few are adopted by survivors who lost their own children, most simply disappear. Your own children have aged to decades in months. Your 8-year-old son knows how to check for buboes. Your 6-year-old daughter can smell death coming, that sweet sixth scent that means someone has hours left. They've stopped asking when things will go back to normal. The schools closed months ago. The teachers are dead. Education now means learning which houses to avoid, which wells might be poisoned, how to tell if meat is human flesh. Your children can't read, but they can spot plague symptoms from across a street. Child labor laws, such as they were, have vanished. 8-year-olds work as gravediggers. 10-year-olds run shops. A 12-year-old girl down the street became the head of her household after everyone else died. She's negotiating with creditors, managing servants twice her age, making decisions that would challenge adults. The truly little ones, the babies, might be the luckiest. They die quickly, without understanding. You've seen too many infant corpses to count, but at least they didn't know fear. They didn't spend weeks waiting for death, checking their bodies each morning, watching their families disappear one by one. The church tries to maintain some pretense of protecting innocence. They still won't bury unbaptized children in consecrated ground, as if God cares about ceremonies when he's killing babies by the thousand. Parents sneak their dead infants into churchyards at night, burying them in secret, praying that's enough. You watch your own children playing in the yard. They've built a small pile of stones, a pretend grave for their wooden doll. They take turns being the priest, mumbling half-remembered Latin. They're practicing for a ritual they've seen too many times. The children of 1348 aren't children anymore. They're just small humans learning to survive in hell. Death has become London's only thriving business. While bakers, merchants, and craftsmen die or flee, a new economy emerges, one built entirely on disposing of the dead. And business is booming. The gravediggers are the new nobility. They command prices that would have bought a house before the plague. Thomas the gravedigger, who you used to see begging for ale money, now wears silk stolen from corpses and drinks wine from a dead merchant's cellar. He'll be dead within a week. Gravediggers rarely last longer, but for now he's rich. The corpse collectors work in teams, moving through the city at dawn and dusk. "Bring out your dead," they cry, ringing bells to announce their approach. They don't check if the bodies are actually dead anymore. Too dangerous to get close. If you don't move when they grab you, into the cart you go. There are stories of people waking up in the death pits, crawling over mountains of corpses to escape. The coffin makers gave up weeks ago. There's no wood left, and nowhere near enough time. Bodies are wrapped in whatever's available. Sheets, clothes, sometimes nothing at all. The rich might get a wooden box, but even they're often dumped in mass graves. Death is the great equalizer. A new profession has emerged: the searchers, women usually old and poor, who are paid to examine bodies and determine if plague was the cause. They're supposed to prevent the concealment of plague deaths, but everyone knows they can be bribed. A family trying to avoid quarantine will pay anything to have a death listed as consumption or fever instead of plague. The death pits are an industry unto themselves. Teams of diggers work day and night, excavating massive trenches outside the city. The lime burners work overtime, producing quicklime to throw over the bodies. It speeds decomposition and might reduce the spread of disease. The smell is indescribable. You watch a funeral procession pass, a rare sight now, someone wealthy enough to afford individual burial. The mourners are professionals, hired because the real family is dead or too afraid to attend. They wail on cue, their grief is fake as their tears. They'll do 3 more funerals today, same performance each time. The church charges for everything now, blessing the dead, praying for souls, even entering the churchyard. They claim it's to maintain services, but everyone sees the priests getting fatter while the people starve. The Bishop of London fled to his country estate months ago, but still collects death taxes through his representatives. Even the animals have joined the death industry. Packs of dogs roam the streets, fat and glossy from feeding on corpses. The rats are everywhere, bigger and bolder than before. The cats that might control them are mostly dead, killed by people who thought they spread the plague. This is London's new economy, a city that produces nothing but corpses and the infrastructure to process them. Every living person is just a future customer in the death trade. The constables are dead. The judges are dead. The sheriff fled to Scotland 3 weeks ago. Law and order haven't just collapsed. They've become meaningless concepts in a city where death is the only authority that matters. You witness your first murder on Tuesday. A man kills his neighbor over a loaf of bread. In broad daylight, in front of 20 witnesses. Nobody stops him. Nobody reports it. Why would they? To whom? The murderer dies of plague by Friday anyway. Justice served, medieval style. The prisons have become death houses. Newgate Jail had 300 prisoners when the plague arrived. Now it has 6. Not released, just dead. The guards stopped feeding them weeks ago, stopped coming at all days ago. The few survivors broke out, but where can they run? The whole city is a prison now. Property law is a joke. Your neighbor dies, you take his house. Someone stronger wants it, they take it from you. Might makes right, and right now, Anyone still standing is mighty. Squatters occupy mansions. Noble estates are looted by their own servants. The king's peace, that ancient concept that supposedly protects citizens, is openly mocked. Royal decrees arrive from Windsor Castle, where the king hides behind high walls and armed guards. All subjects must remain in their parishes. Wages must not exceed pre-plague levels. Order must be maintained. People use the proclamations as toilet paper. Gangs have formed, not organized crime, just desperate people banding together for survival. They raid houses where entire families have died, taking food, clothes, anything valuable. Sometimes the families aren't quite dead yet. The gangs help them along. You see a woman dragged into the street, accused of witchcraft. She allegedly cursed her neighbor, who then died of plague. Never mind that everyone's dying of plague. The mob doesn't want logic. They want someone to blame. They beat her to death with stones and sticks. Her real crime? She was Jewish. The few remaining authorities are corrupt beyond measure. The ward constable charges protection fees. Pay him, and he won't report your house as plague. Don't pay, and you'll find a red cross painted on your door, whether anyone's sick or not. Contract law, inheritance law, marriage law, all meaningless now. A man claims to be your dead brother's son, demanding inheritance. Is he lying? Who knows? All the witnesses are dead. All the documents are in buildings no one will enter. Some people have declared themselves the new law. A group of flagellants has taken over the market square, holding trials for sinners they claim caused the plague. Their justice is whipping, beating, sometimes burning. Nobody stops them. The survivors are too exhausted to care. This is what happens when society's glue dissolves. Without fear of punishment, some become monsters. Others become heroes. Most just become numb, watching civilization eat itself while waiting for their turn to die. By November 1348, London has gone collectively insane. The human mind isn't designed to process death on this scale. When 1 in 2 people die in 6 months, when children bury parents daily, when God himself seems to have abandoned the world, madness becomes a rational response. The dancing plague starts in Smithfield. A woman begins dancing in the street, spinning and leaping over corpses. She doesn't stop. Others join her. Soon dozens are dancing, laughing hysterically, unable or unwilling to stop. They dance until they collapse from exhaustion, then get up and dance more. Some dance themselves to death. The church calls it demonic possession. Physicians call it corrupted humors. It's probably just minds breaking under unbearable stress. Religious mania explodes everywhere. A man claims to be the second coming of Christ, promising salvation from plague. He gathers hundreds of followers before dying of the very disease he promised to cure. His followers claim he'll resurrect in 3 days. When he doesn't, they insist the corpse is preaching to them. They carry his rotting body through the streets, declaring his message of salvation. The flagellants have evolved from self-punishment to public insanity. They march through the city, hundreds strong, whipping themselves and anyone else they deem sinful. Blood flies from their scourges, splattering on observers. They claim their blood has healing powers. People collect it in vials, drink it, bathe in it. The flagellants themselves die at extraordinary rates, but replacements always appear. Suicide becomes common, not the desperate leaping from bridges, but calculated family murders. Parents kill their children to spare them suffering, then kill themselves. One father poisons his entire family at dinner, believing they'll reunite in paradise. The church condemns it, but what threat is hell when you're already living in it? The laughter is the worst part. Hysterical, uncontrollable laughter from people who've lost everything. You hear it echoing through empty houses, see people giggling as they dig graves for their children. It's the sound of minds protecting themselves by breaking. Delusions spread faster than plague. People see armies of demons marching through the sky. Others swear they've witnessed battles between angels and devils over London Bridge. A woman claims her dead husband visits nightly, telling her who will die next. The terrifying part? She's often right, though in a city where everyone's dying, it's not hard to predict death. The plague parties are perhaps the maddest response. Groups gather in abandoned houses, feasting on stolen food, engaging in orgies, deliberately exposing themselves to infection. If we're all going to die, they say, let's die happy. They laugh, they sing, they copulate with strangers, they share cups with the infected. It's suicide disguised as celebration. You feel your own sanity slipping. You've started talking to the dead. Your son, your brother, your neighbors. You have full conversations with people who've been buried for weeks. Sometimes, in the corner of your eye, you swear they answer back. This is what the Black Death does to the living. It doesn't just kill the body, it murders the mind, one unbearable day at a time. November turns to December, and you realize with horror that winter is approaching. As if the plague wasn't enough, now you have to survive the cold in a city that's running out of everything: food, fuel, and most importantly, hope. The wood sellers are all dead. The coal merchants fled or died months ago. People are burning furniture, doors, even support beams from their own houses. Entire neighborhoods are cannibalizing themselves for warmth. You watch a family burn their own roof beams, choosing hypothermia later over freezing now. Your own fire is down to embers. You've burned everything non-essential: chairs, tables, your marriage chest. The children's toys went last week. They didn't cry. They understand. Heat means life. Sentiment is a luxury nobody can afford. The Thames is starting to freeze. Usually this would mean ice fairs, skating, celebration. Now it means the last supply boats can't reach the city. The roads are already nearly impassable, not from snow, but from bodies, corpses frozen solid in the streets, turned into macabre obstacles. Food becomes even scarcer. The rats that spread the plague are now being eaten. Cat, dog, horse, all fair game. You hear whispers of worse, but you don't investigate. Survival has its own morality, and you're not ready to judge what others do to feed their children. Your house is freezing. Ice forms inside, on the walls, on your blankets. You all sleep in one pile now. You, your wife, your remaining children, like animals conserving heat. Privacy, dignity, personal space. These concepts died with summer. The plague changes in winter. The bubonic form slows. Fleas don't thrive in extreme cold, but the pneumonic form, the one that spreads through the air, accelerates. Every cough in your freezing house could be death announcing itself. The cold makes everyone cough. You venture out for wood and see horrors multiplied by frost. Bodies frozen mid-crawl, trying to reach shelter. Children frozen to their dead mothers. A man frozen standing up, leaning against a wall, eyes open, looking almost alive, until you see the ice crystals on his pupils. The wealthy who fled to the countryside are trying to return. Their country estates are no warmer, and food is scarce everywhere. But London won't take them back. Mobs guard the city gates, turning away anyone who fled when times got hard. You left us to die, they shout. Now die somewhere else. Churches that once offered sanctuary are locked and barricaded. The priests who remain huddle around their own fires, refusing to open doors. One church burns down when desperate people break in seeking warmth. 50 people burn alive. Their screams echo across the frozen city, but nobody comes to help. Snow begins to fall, covering the corpses, the filth, the devastation. For a moment, London almost looks peaceful. White blankets hiding the horror beneath. Then you see the red blood seeping through snow, where new bodies have been dumped. The city is a wounded animal, bleeding out in winter's grip. You realize with cold certainty many who survived the plague won't survive the winter. The disease was just the first wave. Now comes starvation, freezing, the complete collapse of civilization in the cold. January 1349. Rumors spread through the frozen city like wildfire. The plague is weakening. Fewer people are dying. Some who get sick are actually recovering. Is it possible? Is this nightmare finally ending? You want to believe it. God knows you need to believe it. The death bells ring less frequently. Only 50 deaths yesterday instead of 200. The death carts come twice a day instead of hourly. The corpse mountains and the plague pits aren't growing as fast. People start emerging from their houses, blinking in the weak winter sun like moles. Neighbors you thought were dead appear, gaunt and haunted but breathing. Small markets reopen. A baker actually bakes bread. Real bread, not the sawdust-filled mockery you've been eating. The church declares it a miracle. God has heard your prayers, they say. The flagellants claim their blood sacrifice worked. The physicians insist their treatments finally succeeded. Everyone wants credit for something that might just be the plague running out of victims to kill. But you've learned not to trust hope. You've seen it before. Brief respites where the dying slows, only to explode again worse than before. Hope is dangerous. Hope makes you careless. Hope gets you killed, and you're right to be suspicious. The plague hasn't disappeared. It's evolved. What you're seeing isn't recovery, it's the disease becoming endemic. And when a bee cover, Kaseventalabolju ketsi, cats gang everyone pass, and give it bet. Instead of killing in 3 days, it now takes a week. Instead of killing everyone, it kills only most. Mwishal, this isn't victory, it's the plague settling in for a long stay. The celebrations are premature and deadly. Families reunite, sharing meals and embraces. Within days, new outbreaks explode. The plague seems almost vindictive, punishing those who dared believe it was over. Your neighbor throws a survival feast, inviting everyone on the street who's still alive. 7 families gather, sharing food, wine, stories of the dead. It feels almost normal for one evening. Within a week, 5 of those families are extinct. The plague was at the party, invisible, patient, waiting. The authorities try to declare victory. The king sends proclamations. The pestilence is defeated. Normal life must resume. Taxes are due immediately. It would be funny if it weren't so cruel. How do you resume normal life when 2/3 of the population is dead? The false hope is almost crueler than the despair. People make plans again, marriages, business ventures, travel. They dig up the gold they buried, thinking they'll need it. They burn their plague masks, their protective herbs. They embrace strangers in the street, celebrating survival. Then February comes, and with it, a new wave of death. Not as intense as the peak, but steady, relentless. The plague isn't leaving, it's becoming part of life. The new normal. People will die of plague for years to come, just fewer at a time. You learn the cruelest lesson of all. The plague doesn't end with a victory or a defeat. It just becomes another way to die in a world that's already full of them. March 1349. The great dying is slowing, not because the plague is defeated, but because there are fewer people left to kill. London, which once held 80,000 souls, now houses maybe 30,000. The mathematics of survival are simple and brutal. You're still alive. Somehow, you check your body each morning, still expecting to find the fatal swellings, but they never come. Why you? Why not your son, your brother, your neighbors? There's no answer that makes sense. Survival feels less like victory and more like a curse. The city is unrecognizable. Entire streets stand empty, houses gape open, doors hanging off hinges, windows dark, weeds already pushed through abandoned floors. London is becoming a ghost town, with living people haunting it. You walk through your old neighborhood, counting the dead. The Bakers, all 7, gone. The Smiths, dead. The Coopers, dead, except for the grandmother, who sits in her doorway, talking to family members who no longer exist. The Taylors, the Brewers, the Chandlers, entire bloodlines erased. The economic aftermath is beginning. With so few workers, survivors name their price. A field hand demands what a merchant once earned. A serving girl asks for noble wages. The old order is dead, killed by the plague as surely as the people were. But there's no joy in this newfound leverage. What good is wealth in a dead city? You can afford bread now, but the baker's daughter who smiled at you is buried in a mass grave. You could buy a fine house, but it would be haunted by the family who died in it. The psychological scars are deeper than any bubo. You flinch when anyone coughs. You can't stand being touched. The smell of roses, once pleasant, now makes you vomit because it reminds you of the posies people carried to mask the stench of death. Children who survived are old before their time. They play quietly, if at all. They know too much about death, have seen too much. Your own daughter, just 7, asked yesterday if you'd bury her in the churchyard or the plague pit when she dies. Not if. When. The guilt is crushing. Survivor's guilt, they'll call it centuries later, but you just call it living when others didn't. Every breath feels stolen from someone more deserving. Every meal tastes like betrayal to the starved dead. The city tries to rebuild, but how do you rebuild from this? It's not just the infrastructure, it's the knowledge. Master craftsmen died before passing on their skills. Entire trades are extinct. Books rot in empty libraries because the literate are dead. You attend a town meeting, the first in months. Of the 100 aldermen who once governed London, 12 remain. They try to discuss reconstruction, trade, the future, but their eyes are hollow. They're going through the motions of civilization, but everyone knows the truth. The old world is dead. This is your reckoning. You survived the worst pandemic in human history. But survival isn't living. You're not a winner. You're just the last one standing in a contest nobody wanted to enter. And by summer 1349, a new society is emerging from the ashes. Not better, not worse, just different, alien. A world built by survivors who no longer follow the old rules because the old rules died with the old world. The class system hasn't just shifted, it's shattered. You watch a serf marry a noble lady, not for love, but because she needs someone who knows how to work land, and he's the only one left who can. A prostitute inherits a merchant's fortune and becomes respectable overnight. A street sweeper owns 3 houses because everyone else who might claim them is dead. Language itself is changing. People have stopped saying "when I die" and started saying "if I survive." God willing has been replaced with grim silence. Nobody makes plans beyond next week. The future tense is practically extinct. Marriage has become a business of survival. Love is a luxury nobody can afford. Widows and widowers remarry within days of their spouse's death, not from callousness, but necessity. Children need parents, farms need workers, businesses need partners. You see couples who barely know each other's names, exchanging vows over mass graves. The birth rate has exploded among survivors, not from hope, but from desperation to replace the dead. Women who lost all their children deliberately get pregnant again and again, trying to outpace death. Babies are named after dead siblings, living ghosts of children who didn't make it. Religion has fractured. Some become fanatically devout, believing their survival proves God's favor. Others abandon faith entirely. What God would allow this? New sects emerge, preaching that the plague was the apocalypse, and survivors are living in hell or heaven depending on their interpretation. Crime has taken new forms, not just theft and murder, but grave robbing on an industrial scale. The dead were often buried with valuables, and the living need resources. Bodies are dug up, stripped, and reburied. Sometimes the robbers find plague victims who weren't quite dead, buried alive in the chaos. Sometimes they help them, sometimes they don't. Education has virtually ceased. Who has time to learn Latin when you're trying not to die? The few teachers who survived are teaching practical skills: how to recognize plague symptoms, how to purify water, how to preserve food. Children learn to count by tallying corpses. Art has become grotesque. Painters who survived paint nothing but death, dancing skeletons, rotting corpses, the triumph of mortality, the danse macabre. Beauty seems obscene when surrounded by so much ugliness. The only music is dirges, and the only poetry is epitaphs. Trade is slowly resuming, but it's different. Merchants won't touch money directly. Coins are passed through vinegar or fire. Ships arrive, but crews won't disembark. Goods are left on docks, payment left in return, all without human contact. Trust is dead. Only necessity drives commerce. This is your new world, scarred, traumatized, but somehow still functioning. Humanity didn't end with the plague. It just became something else, something harder, something that knows exactly how fragile civilization really is. October 1349, a full year since the plague arrived. You've survived 12 months in hell, but you're not the same person who woke up that first morning to the smell of death. None of the survivors are. You're the living dead, breathing but not alive, existing but not living. You don't sleep anymore, not really. Every time you close your eyes, you see them, the faces of the dead. Your son reaching for you as the fever takes him. Your brother's body twisted in agony. The pile of children in the plague pit. Sleep is where the dead visit, so you stay awake until exhaustion forces you under. Food has lost all taste. You eat because your body demands it, but everything tastes like ash. How can you enjoy bread when you remember fighting over moldy crusts? How can you savor meat when you know what starving people were forced to eat? Your wife hasn't laughed in 6 months. Neither have you. What is there to laugh about? Jokes feel like blasphemy. Joy feels like betrayal to the dead. You go through the motions of living, working, eating, sleeping, but it's all mechanical. You're puppets with cut strings, moving out of habit rather than purpose. The plague has left, but its ghosts remain. Every headache might be the beginning. Every cough could be your death sentence. A slight fever sends you into panic. You check your neck, your armpits, your groin, multiple times daily. The plague is gone, but the fear is permanent. Relationships are broken beyond repair. How do you love someone when you've already imagined their death 1,000 times? How do you trust when you've seen families abandon each other? Every connection comes with an asterisk, until death, which could be tomorrow. You see other survivors and recognize the same deadness in their eyes. You're a city of ghosts haunting each other. Conversations are sparse, functional. Nobody talks about before. Nobody talks about the dead. Nobody talks about feelings. There's an unspoken agreement. We don't discuss the nightmare we're still living. Work continues, but it's meaningless. You're a carpenter, but who needs furniture in a half-empty city? You build coffins mostly, and repairs for houses that will never be full again. Each hammer strike echoes in empty streets. You're building for ghosts. Children who survive don't play anymore. They sit quietly, stare at nothing, age before your eyes. Your daughter used to sing. Now she's silent. She helps with chores, does what she's told, but the spark is gone. The plague killed her body's future companions, but murdered her soul in the present. The city tries to celebrate. Feast days, holy days, market days, but the celebrations are hollow. people go through the motions, but nobody's heart is in it? How do you celebrate when 2/3 of the people who should be there are rotting in mass graves? You're alive, technically. Your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your body moves, but the you that existed before, the one with dreams, hopes, plans for the future, that person is as dead as the plague victims. What survived is just a shell, going through motions, waiting for an end that already came and went. 1 year later, October 1350, the Black Death has moved on, sweeping across Europe, leaving London a hollowed-out shell. You're still here, still breathing, still checking your body each morning for signs of death that never came. It's time for the final accounting. London has lost 60,000 souls. 6 out of every 10 people you knew are gone. Entire professions have vanished. Whole family lines extinguished. The city that was once the jewel of England is now a monument to death. But here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Life goes on, not the same life, but life nonetheless. Markets reopen, ships arrive, babies are born. The wheel of existence keeps turning, indifferent to the magnitude of loss. You've inherited more than you ever wanted. 3 houses from dead relatives, a business from your former employer, land from neighbors who died without heirs. You're wealthy now in the way a last man alive is king of nothing. The social order will never recover. Serfs have become landowners. Peasants demand wages that would have caused revolution before. The nobility is decimated, their bloodlines broken, their power diminished. The world that existed before 1348 is as dead as if it never existed. The church has lost its authority. Too many prayers went unanswered. Too many faithful died while sinners lived. The priests who fled are returning to empty churches and bitter congregations. God, if he exists, has some explaining to do. New laws are being written. Desperate attempts to restore the old order, maximum wage laws, sumptuary laws, laws forcing people to stay in their birth professions. They're unenforceable. How do you force a social structure on people who've seen society itself dissolve? You look at your surviving family, your wife, aged 20 years and 2, your daughter who no longer remembers how to smile. This is your victory. This is what survival looks like. You won the lottery of life, and the prize is living in the ruins. The plague will return. Everyone knows it. Maybe not this year, maybe not next, but it will come back. It always does now. The Black Death isn't an event anymore. It's a feature of existence, like winter or taxes or death itself. History will remember this as the Great Mortality, the time when death ruled Europe. But for you, it's just Tuesday, in a world remade by loss. You don't feel historical. You feel tired, empty, hollowed out by survival. So what's the lesson? What's the moral of this nightmare? There isn't one. That's the hardest truth. The plague didn't come to teach or punish or improve. It just came, killed, and left. The only meaning is what survivors create from the wreckage. You survived the Black Death. Millions didn't. You're not special, not chosen, not blessed. You're just alive. In 1350, after everything you've seen and lost, that has to be enough. Because in the end, after the dying and the suffering and the complete collapse of everything you thought permanent, you're still here, still breathing in a world that tried its best to stop you. Welcome to the rest of your life, however long that might be. The year is now. Whenever you're watching this, you're sitting comfortably, probably in a climate-controlled room, with medicine in your cabinet that would seem like magic to a plague victim. You've never seen a mass grave. You've never had to check your body for death spots. You've never watched your entire world die in front of you. But here's what connects you to that survivor in 1350 London. You're both human. You both know fear. You both understand loss. And somewhere deep in your DNA is the genetic memory of ancestors who survived the unsurvivable. The Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people. It destroyed the medieval world and gave birth to the Renaissance. It ended feudalism and began capitalism. It took humanity to the absolute brink, and somehow, we climbed back. Those who lived through it weren't heroes. They weren't special. They were just people, like you, who woke up each day in a nightmare and kept going. They checked their bodies for symptoms and went to work. They buried their children and had more. They watched everything collapse and started rebuilding. The plague returned every few decades for centuries. Each generation learned to live with the possibility of sudden mass death. They built civilization on top of mass graves, created art in the shadow of mortality, fell in love knowing it could end tomorrow. And here you are, descendant of survivors, living in a world they rebuilt from ashes. Every convenience you enjoy, every right you have, every moment of peace, all built on the bones of those who died and the trauma of those who didn't. So next time you complain about a minor inconvenience, remember the man checking his neck for buboes. Next time you're frustrated with slow Wi-Fi, remember the woman choosing which child to feed. Next time you think your life is hard, remember the survivor counting empty houses, wondering why they lived when everyone else died. You are the legacy of the greatest catastrophe in human history. Your existence proves that even when 60% of the world dies, the other 40% keeps going. That's not inspiring, it's not comforting, it's just true. The Black Death ended eventually, but it never really left. It lives in our collective memory, in our DNA, in our deep fear of contagion and collapse. It's the shadow behind every pandemic panic, every social breakdown, every moment when civilization seems fragile. Because now you know the truth. It is fragile. It always has been. The difference between the world you know and complete collapse is smaller than you think. The people of 1348 learned that the hard way. Hopefully, you never will.